Let's move on to today's unpopular opinion.
Unpopular opinion.
Freedom of choice doesn't lead to happiness. La libertad de elección no conduce a la felicidad. What do you think, Dan?
True.
You think true? It doesn't lead to happiness. Are you just saying true because you think that's where I'm thinking?
No. It's because, sometimes you have a lot of options and you just rather have just two.
Can I say, for a guy of your age and demographic, that is an absolutely salient and intelligent point.
Thanks.
Because the younger I was, the more I bought into the myth that the more choice there is, the more free I am, the more happy I will be. And that is not the case. How do you think they voted on Instagram?
False.
Interestingly enough, I've been keeping my eye on this all morning, and for a second, false is winning. For a second, true is winning. The poll will be up for another hour and a half here on Instagram. Right now, true is winning, but by 52% only. By the rules of this show, we consider that a 50-50 answer. So I will ask our audience members to make the decision. We'll try and get to some conclusive answer to this in the chat. Does freedom of choice lead to happiness? Or as the author Barry Schwartz, the author of the amazing book that I've read several times, Paradox of Choice, as he suggests, does it actually lead to a decision fatigue, anxiety, regret, and making you overall less satisfied with your final decision? We live in a world where there are 175 different types of salad dressing. Is that really necessary? Agreeing that freedom of choice doesn't lead to happiness. Speak of the Devil, point 1, deals with the paradox of choice. Choice overload leads to anxiety. Having too many options can be overwhelming. Studies in psychology, such as the paradox of choice by Barry Schwartz, suggest that when people face too many choices, they experience decision fatigue, anxiety, and regret, making them less satisfied with their final decision. If I've got time in the second half, I'll tell you a nice anecdote from that book. Increased regret and self-blame. When people make choices freely, they feel personally responsible for the outcomes. If things don't turn out well, they often blame themselves rather than external factors, leading to dissatisfaction and self-doubt. More choice creates fear of missing out. FOMO. When people have multiple paths available, they constantly wonder if they chose the best one. I believe Dan Gilbert has a really interesting book on this. When people have multiple paths, they consistently wonder if they chose the best one. This can lead to second-guessing, dissatisfaction, and a lingering sense of that something better was missed, right? If you've got a choice of 100 things, it's not a choice of the best thing. It's the best possible outcome in the time you have to choose, right? Leading to paralysis and doubt when you finally make your decision. Simple, structured lives lead to contentment. In societies where people have fewer choices, such as minimalist cultures or traditional communities, people often report higher levels of happiness. Fewer choices mean fewer distractions and greater focus on what truly matters. And finally, not all choices lead to better outcomes. Just because people have freedom doesn't mean they make good decisions. Many people make harmful choices, such as poor financial, career, or health decisions, which can lead to stress, regret, and reduced happiness. Let's get into the cons now. The con argument: freedom of choice leads to happiness. Psychological research consistently shows that autonomy, being able to make real choices for oneself, is the strongest predictors of happiness. When people have control over their lives, they feel more fulfilled and motivated. I would argue here there's quite a lot of bias by the elves this morning. Why would I say that? Because having limited choices does not mean having no choices. I want to repeat that. If you could choose between 5 different types of salad dressing instead of 175, wouldn't you be just as happy? If you could choose between 5 different kinds of cereal instead of 155, wouldn't you be just as happy? In fact, wouldn't that decision be easier to make? I think it might. Let's get into the next point in the con column. Allows people to pursue their passions. Without freedom of choice, many people may be forced into careers, relationships, or lifestyles that don't suit them. The ability to choose means people can align their lives with their personal values and interests. Great point there. Great point. We have a whole world of career opportunities ahead of us. Where do we choose? What do we choose? Where do we point our passions? Look, my best friend is in her 40s. She still doesn't know what she wants to do for a living. I have changed careers, I think, 8 times in my life. Been lucky enough to garner a certain amount of success in each of them to keep the momentum going. But who's to say the next career change, if I make one, is going to be the right one? Did you always know you wanted to be a sound technician, Dan?
No, just some years ago.
Just some years ago. So you went through most of your higher education not having a clue what you wanted to do, right?
Right.
Exactly. Why? Because there's just so many possibilities. And just because you make a decision doesn't mean it's going to be the decision that you're going to be passionate about for the rest of your life. Let's continue. Increased innovation and progress. Societies that allow people to make choices foster creativity, entrepreneurship, and scientific advancements. If people had fewer choices, innovation would stagnate, reducing overall quality of life. I call BS on this as well. As someone who works in a creative field all my life, most of the progress and true creativity I've had is because of the boundaries that have been put around me. Creative problem solving happens when there are problems to be solved, not when I have the freedom to do whatever I want. Usually in those instances where I have carte blanche to create whatever the hell I want, that's when I suffer paralysis. I'm sorry, I'm being very biased in today's show because I feel quite strongly about this one. Freedom allows more fulfilling relationships. In societies where marriages or friendships are chosen for individuals, relationships may feel like obligations. When people have the freedom to choose their partners and friends, they are more likely to form meaningful, fulfilling connections. Have you seen Tinder? Do you think divorce rates are going up or down? Right? Tell me again about your freedom of choice. All right, friends. There you go. Wow, controversial one today. Send me your messages. I know I may have pissed a few people off today. How would I leave off? Barry Schwartz tells an interesting story of how he's an old man and he goes to buy a pair of jeans. Okay? And back when he was a kid, every pair of jeans was the same pair of jeans. They fit badly and they were kind of blue in color, and that was it. He went to a shop to buy a new pair of jeans. And he was faced with, well, what do you want? Do you want boot cut, straight fit, skinny fit? Do you want black, blue, distressed? Do you want... He eventually bought a pair of jeans that was the best fitting and most comfortable pair of jeans he ever owned in his life. But he felt worse about his decision because if he'd have only dedicated a few more hours, perhaps, just perhaps, he might have found a better pair. Is that a lesson for us all? Especially here where we live in abundance in the West, right? Anyway, on that note, I'm going to post a poll in the chat and you will tell me, does freedom of choice ultimately lead to happiness? True or false? I mean, we're all sold the myth that the broader our scope of options in everything, the easier and freer and happier we will be. But I would argue that's not the case. I think that's a cognitive bias that is being fed to us. I think too much choice ultimately leads to paralysis and ultimately to unhappiness. But who gives a damn what the bald man thinks? The poll is live in the chat. You've got 6 more minutes to vote. False, says Earn Warrior. Frustration leads to unhappiness. Well, in that case, true, right? Because having too much choice is frustrating. Have you been to one of those restaurants where the menu looks like a Bible?
Yes.
It is the worst. I love it when I go to a place and they hand me over a sheet of paper with 4 options of each thing. And they do each thing really spectacularly well, rather than do 1,000 things in a mediocre way. Do you understand what I'm getting at? Limiting our options, not eliminating, limiting. Okay, we're not talking about having no options. So let's get into the comments. False says, Vero, total happiness doesn't exist. People create their own happiness with their actions and reactions towards facts. Con says, at the very least, choice can allow for happiness. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I'm a rare case because I will eat the same thing every day, wear the same kind of clothes. When I go clothes shopping, Dan, it's basically to replace the clothes that are no longer wearable. I will pick the same thing, same color. Like, I mean, I'm due for some new blue jeans. And, and that's what I'm going to go and buy, some new blue jeans. I'm not going to browse. I'm not going to peruse. I wonder, do you think we've changed anybody's minds from false to true today with today's discourse?
I hope so.
Yeah, me too. Me too, because the world is a village, man. We are being pushed in a direction of being isolationist, being very self-centered. Social media certainly helps a great deal in pushing that narrative, but we're not. We're a community. And we in the West live in abundance. I know right now that's a difficult thing to hear because there is a cost of living crisis all over the world. Things are more expensive than they should be. Earlier on in the show, I said, look, why do things cost so much? Maybe if the massive amounts of wealth that these Elon Musk is worth $400 billion. Perhaps if wealth were more evenly distributed. But, that's not the world we live in. But maybe a small step in that direction is to understand that we don't need so much. We don't need to choose between 5,000 different kinds of television. Damn, we don't even need to choose between 40 different television brands. Right? I don't know, friends. And then I say these things and I get accused of being a communist. Which I'm sure is going to happen on Instagram. Anyway, let's see. Shall we see what some people said on Instagram? Hang on, wait. I got a good one from Nessa. For Nessa, let me see if I can find it. But losing freedom does not lead to happiness. No. But isn't there a big difference between freedom of choice and freedom? Isn't it? I think so. I don't think having an almost infinite number of decisions you can make is freedom. I honestly don't. I think that's slavery. Honestly, I do. And I feel more free to do with my time as I please when my decisions are made more simple by having fewer options. That's just my opinion. Caleb says, too many choices can be overwhelming. Sometimes having fewer options actually makes life easier and less stressful. I would agree. Serena says, I disagree. Having choices means you can shape your own life. Even if it's hard, I'd rather have the freedom to decide than be stuck with no control over my future. Which is also a valid point. I think it depends. Some choice is good. This is from Luis. But too much can lead to regret and anxiety. The key is learning to be happy with the decisions you do make. Oh, I love that. Is the problem the economy or is the problem the human condition? Everyone wants to distribute wealth until the wealth is theirs. He makes a great point. Lack of choice is not a good thing. I lived in the USSR and I know a lot about that, says Eugene. Okay, so the poll is finished. I made the statement that freedom of choice does not necessarily lead to happiness, and you guys said my God, Dan, 100% true. Yeah, I would agree. Obviously, I've made a very strong pro argument today. I try and keep it a little bit more balanced. I do kind of personally feel strongly about this one. I think we have way too much choice and we put way too much value on the act of choosing. Because does freedom of choice really bring you happiness? I'll tell you what brings me happiness. Spending time with my family and with my girlfriend. I'll tell you what brings me happiness. Sitting down, watching the TV show on my sofa with my dogs. But someone made a really salient point here on Instagram. Who was it? Was it Luis? Being happy with the choices you do make. It was Luis. Thank you for that message, by the way. You can reach out to me on Instagram at Professional Bohemian. Being happy with the choices that you do make. Yeah. I would argue that a proliferation of choice, too much choice, almost makes it impossible to be happy with the choice that you've made, because there is an infinite number of possibilities that you didn't take, paths not explored because you made a decision. And I do believe that's crippling, and I don't believe it leads to happiness. But you know what, friends? You know what Grandpa Bo would say about that? He would say, Rob, that's just your opinion, but opinions, they're like buttholes. Everyone has one. They all stink, including yours. Let's move on to today's 100 Humans.